They say you never really know someone until you see them at their worst. What they don't tell you is that sometimes your worst moment becomes the key to discovering who you really are. My husband thought losing my job would make me weak and desperate. He had no idea it was about to make me the most dangerous woman he'd ever underestimated. My name is Claire, and this is the story of how one pink slip changed everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the price of underestimating the woman who sleeps beside you every night. It was a Thursday morning in late September when everything started falling apart. I remember because Thursday was our day. For 8 years of marriage, Thursday mornings meant pancakes and coffee in bed, stolen kisses between snooze button hits, and plans for the weekend. Michael would always wake up first, brush his teeth, and come back smelling like mint and promises. That morning he didn't come back to bed. I found him in the kitchen, already dressed in his expensive navy suit, the one I'd bought him for his promotion last year. He was scrolling through his phone with that intense focus he usually reserved for stock reports and client meetings. "Morning, beautiful," I said, wrapping my arms around his waist from behind. He tensed under my touch. "Morning, Claire. You're going to be late." "It's Thursday," I reminded him. "Pancake Thursday." He turned in my arms, but instead of the warm smile I expected, his face was distant, almost cold. "Maybe we should skip it today. Big day at the office." I should have known then. Should have recognized the signs. The way he avoided my eyes. The way he stepped out of my embrace just a fraction too quickly. The way Thursday became just another day. But I was too busy being happy to notice my world was about to collapse. I worked as a senior financial analyst for Meridian Investments, a mid-sized firm downtown that managed portfolios for wealthy clients. I was good at my job. Really good. I'd been there for 6 years, working my way up from junior analyst to senior position, and I genuinely loved the work. Numbers made sense to me. Markets had patterns. People were predictable. Or so I thought. My office was on the 32nd floor with a view of the harbor. Every morning, I'd arrive with my coffee and watch the sunrise paint the water gold while I reviewed overnight market reports. It was my ritual, my moment of peace before the chaos of trading hours began. That Thursday, I never got to see the sunrise. My boss, Richard Hartwell, called me into his office at 7:45. Richard was a tall, thin man with graying temples and the kind of quiet confidence that came from 20 years of making other people rich. We'd always had a good relationship. Professional but warm. He'd mentored me, promoted me, trusted me with the firm's biggest accounts. "Claire, sit down," he said, gesturing to the leather chair across from his mahogany desk. The blinds were closed. That should have been my first warning. Richard never closed his blinds. He liked watching the harbor while he worked, claimed it helped him think. "There's no easy way to say this," he continued. His hands folded on the desk. "The firm is restructuring. We're eliminating several positions." My stomach dropped. "Several positions. Sorry, Claire. Your position is one of them." The words hit me like a physical blow. I sat there, staring at this man who'd been like a father figure to me, trying to process what he'd just said. "Richard," I managed to whisper. "I don't understand. My performance reviews have been excellent. The Henderson account alone brought in $2 million last quarter." "This isn't about performance," he said gently. "It's about numbers. Bottom line. The board made the decision yesterday." Yesterday, while I was at home making dinner for Michael, excited about our weekend plans to visit the new art gallery downtown, my career was being decided in a boardroom I'd never been invited to. "How long do I have?" I asked. "Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Your final paycheck will include 2 weeks severance." 2 weeks. After 6 years of 60-hour weeks, missed dinners, cancelled vacations, and putting the firm before everything else in my life, I got 2 weeks. I packed my personal items into a cardboard box under the watchful eyes of building security. My coffee mug with a chip on the handle. The photo of Michael and me from our honeymoon in Tuscany. The little jade plant my assistant had given me for my birthday. 6 years of my professional life reduced to objects that fit in a box smaller than a microwave. The elevator ride down 32 floors felt like falling. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, staring at my phone. I should call Michael. I should tell him what happened. He'd be supportive. He'd tell me everything would be okay. He'd remind me that we had savings, that we could manage until I found something new. But something made me hesitate. Maybe it was the way he'd avoided my kiss that morning. Maybe it was the way he'd been working late more and more frequently. Maybe it was just intuition, that little voice in the back of my mind that had been trying to tell me something was wrong for weeks. I drove home instead of calling. Our house in Brookfield Heights was everything we'd dreamed of when we'd bought it 3 years ago. Colonial style with white shutters, a wraparound porch, and a garden I'd spent countless weekends perfecting. The mortgage was substantial but manageable on our combined incomes. We'd planned to start a family there, to grow old on that front porch, to build a life that mattered. Michael's car wasn't in the driveway. I let myself in and stood in our foyer, listening to the silence. The house felt different somehow. Empty in a way that had nothing to do with Michael being at work. I went upstairs to our bedroom and found his dresser drawers half empty. That's when I knew. I sat on our bed, the bed where we'd made love just 2 nights before, where he'd whispered that he loved me and couldn't imagine life without me, and I understood that I'd lost more than my job that day. I'd lost my husband too. Michael came home at 6:30, carrying takeout from Antonio's, our favorite Italian restaurant. He set the bags on the kitchen counter and turned to face me with the expression of a man about to perform surgery without anesthesia. "Claire, we need to talk." "I know," I said. "I lost my job today." His face didn't change. No surprise. No concern. No anger on my behalf. Nothing. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said, but his voice was flat, empty of any real emotion. "Are you?" I asked. He sat down across from me at our dining table, the same table where we'd celebrated promotions and anniversaries, where we'd planned vacations and argued about whose turn it was to take out the trash. "Claire, I've been thinking about us. About our marriage." "Have you?" "Things haven't been good for a while. You know that." "I didn't know that. I thought we were happy. I thought Thursday mornings and Sunday dinners and the way you held my hand during movies meant we were happy. We're different people now than we were 8 years ago," he continued. "We want different things." "What do I want, Michael?" He looked uncomfortable. "I don't know. Security, I guess. Stability. The same routine every day." "And what do you want?" "Something more. Something exciting. Someone who challenges me." Someone. There it was. The word that explained everything. The empty drawers. The late nights. The distance I'd been trying to ignore. "Her name is Amanda," he said. "She works at the marketing firm we hired for the Peterson campaign." Amanda. 26 years old with long blonde hair and legs that went on forever, who looked at Michael like he was the most fascinating man she'd ever met. I'd seen her at the office Christmas party, clinging to his arm while he introduced her around. His assistant, he'd called her then. "How long?" I asked. "Claire, I don't think." "How long, Michael?" 3 months. 3 months. While I was working late to bring in new clients. While I was planning our anniversary dinner. While I was lying in bed next to him, trusting him, loving him, building a future with him. "I want a divorce," he said. The word should have hurt more. Should have shattered me completely. But sitting there in our perfect kitchen with its granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, all I felt was a strange, cold clarity. "Okay," I said. He blinked. Bae. I want one too." That night, Michael slept in the guest room. I lay in our king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process how my entire life had imploded in the span of 12 hours. But as I lay there, something interesting began to happen. The devastating sadness I'd expected didn't come. Instead, I found myself thinking about logistics. Finances. The kinds of details that had always been my specialty. Michael made good money as a commercial real estate broker, but I'd always been the one who handled our investments, our portfolio, our financial planning. I'd been careful, strategic, always thinking 3 steps ahead. I'd also been smart enough to keep some things in my name only. The next morning, Michael was gone before I woke up. He'd left a note saying he was staying at Amanda's apartment while we figured out the details. How thoughtful of him to spare me the awkwardness of his presence. I made myself coffee and sat at my laptop, opening files I hadn't looked at in months. Bank statements, investment accounts, property deeds, insurance policies. What I found was interesting. Very interesting indeed. 8 years ago, when we'd first gotten married, my grandmother had given me a wedding gift. Not cash or china or anything traditional. She'd given me stock certificates. 200 shares of Hartwell Industries, a small but growing company that manufactured specialized medical equipment. Take these, keep them safe, and don't tell anyone about them, she'd said. Not even Michael. A woman should always have her own security. I'd thought it was sweet but old-fashioned. What did I need secret investments for? Michael and I were partners. We shared everything. But I'd kept them anyway, tucked away in a safety deposit box I'd opened in my maiden name. I hadn't thought about those stocks in years. Till now. I drove to the bank and retrieved the certificates. 200 shares of Hartwell Industries, purchased in 1995 for $12 per share. I did the math 3 times before I believed it. At current market value, those shares were worth just over $300,000. But that wasn't the most interesting part. The most interesting part was what I discovered when I researched the company's ownership structure. Hartwell Industries had been acquired 2 years ago by a larger corporation. The acquisition had created a complex web of subsidiaries and shell companies, but following the paper trail led me to a surprising discovery. Michael's real estate company, Preston and Associates, operated out of a building owned by one of those subsidiaries, which meant, in a very indirect but legally binding way, that I owned a piece of the building where my cheating husband worked. I sat in my car outside the bank, holding those stock certificates, and for the first time in 48 hours I smiled. That evening I called my sister Emma. Emma was 2 years older than me and had been through her own messy divorce 5 years earlier. She was tough, practical, and had absolutely no tolerance for men who thought they could walk all over women. "He's cheating," I told her without preamble. "I know," she said. "You know. Claire, everyone knows. He's been parading that girl around town for months. I was wondering when you were going to figure it out." I should have been hurt by that revelation. Should have been embarrassed that I'd been the last to know. Instead, I felt that same cold clarity settling over me. "I want to hire the best divorce attorney in the city," I said. "Now you're talking. I know just the person." Her name was Victoria Sterling, and she had a reputation for taking cheating husbands apart piece by piece. Her office was in a glass tower downtown, all sharp angles and expensive furniture that seemed designed to intimidate. Victoria herself was a small woman with silver hair, and the kind of smile that suggested she enjoyed her work just a little too much. "Tell me everything," she said. I did. The affair. Timing. Michael's assumption that I'd be financially dependent on him. The way he'd planned his exit strategy to coincide with me losing my job. She took notes in a leather portfolio, occasionally asking questions that revealed just how thorough she intended to be. "What assets do you have separately?" she asked. I told her about the stocks. She stopped writing and looked up at me. "How much did you say they were worth?" "Just over 300,000. Her smile widened. "And he doesn't know about them. He has no idea they exist." "But, well," I told her about the building connection, the web of corporate ownership that linked my investments to his workplace. She leaned back in her chair. "Claire, I think your husband may have made a very expensive mistake." Over the next 2 weeks, Victoria's team conducted what she called discovery. They investigated Michael's finances, his business relationships, his personal expenses. What they found painted a picture of a man who'd been planning his exit strategy for months. He'd been moving money. Small amounts, transferred to accounts I didn't have access to. He'd been paying for Amanda's apartment, her car, her credit card bills. He'd even taken out a loan against his 401k to buy her jewelry. All while telling me we needed to be more careful with our spending. But the most interesting discovery came when Victoria's investigators looked into Preston and Associates. The company was in financial trouble. Serious trouble. They'd made some bad investments in commercial properties that had lost value, and they were over-leveraged on several development projects. Michael's personal finances were tied up in the company's fate more than he'd ever admitted to me, which meant that when the company went under, and Victoria's research suggested it would within the next 6 months, Michael would lose everything. Everything except what he could get from our divorce. I want to make him an offer, I told Victoria during our third meeting. She raised an eyebrow. What kind of offer? I want to buy his half of the house. I want to keep the cars, the furniture, everything. In exchange, he can keep his 401k and his business assets. Victoria stared at me. Claire, his business is about to collapse. Those assets aren't worth anything. No. And you're willing to give up your claim to his retirement account, which is substantial, in exchange for material possessions. She leaned forward. Because I have a feeling he's going to need liquid assets very soon. And I want to make sure he doesn't have them. She smiled that dangerous smile again. I think I'm beginning to understand why your grandmother told you to keep those stocks secret. Michael jumped at the offer. He thought he was getting away with something, keeping his business and his retirement money while stuck with just the house and some furniture. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning in December. We met at the courthouse, signed papers, shook hands like business partners closing a deal. He looked relieved, happy even. Amanda was waiting for him in the hallway, all blonde hair and congratulations. She hugged him like he'd just won the lottery. In a way, he thought he had. That afternoon, I met with Victoria one last time. The final papers are filed, she said. The house is yours. Everything in it is yours. He keeps his 401k and his business assets. And the stocks, I asked. Never mentioned in any of the proceedings. As far as the court is concerned, they don't exist. She handed me a folder. These are the documents transferring ownership of the Brookfield house to you. And these, she said, sliding another set of papers across the desk, are the incorporation papers for your new property management company. My what? Claire, those stocks you inherited. The subsidiary connections. The building where Preston and Associates leases space. As of this afternoon, you're not just a shareholder. You're the new landlord. I stared at the papers, not quite believing what I was seeing. Michael's company pays $12,000 a month in rent, she continued. That rent is now paid to you. But there's more. The lease is up for renewal in March. As the new owner, you have the right to negotiate new terms. Or not renew at all, I said. Or not renew at all. That night, I sat in my house, drinking wine and planning my next move. Michael had thought divorcing me would set him free. Instead, he'd just made me his landlord. But I wasn't done yet. I hired a private investigator named David Reese. He was recommended by Victoria's firm, a quiet man with sharp eyes who specialized in financial investigations. I want to know everything, I told him. Every asset, every debt, every business deal, every mistake. It took him 3 weeks to compile the report. When he presented it to me, he looked almost sympathetic. Mrs. Sterling, your ex-husband is in serious trouble. The details were worse than Victoria had predicted. Preston and Associates wasn't just over-leveraged. They were on the verge of bankruptcy. Michael had personally guaranteed several business loans. When the company collapsed, and it was going to collapse, he'd be liable for nearly $2 million in debt. The 401k he'd been so happy to keep. The business assets he'd thought were valuable. All of it would have to be liquidated to pay creditors. But here's the interesting part, David continued. 3 months ago, he transferred ownership of his personal car, a BMW worth about $60,000, to Amanda Parker. The apartment they're living in. It's in her name. He's been systematically moving assets to her to protect them from creditors. Which is illegal, I said. Very illegal. It's called fraudulent transfer. If creditors find out, and they will, both he and Amanda could face criminal charges. I thanked David for his work and spent the evening reading through his report. Page after page of financial disasters, bad decisions, and illegal transfers. Michael had thought he was being clever, protecting his assets by putting them in Amanda's name. He'd actually been creating evidence of his own crimes. That weekend I drove to the marina. Michael and Amanda had been posting photos on social media from their weekend getaway at the lake. They'd rented a cabin, gone boating, looked blissfully happy in their post-divorce freedom. But I wasn't there to spy on them. I was there to visit someone else. James Patterson was a lawyer specializing in bankruptcy and creditors' rights. He also happened to be one of the creditors owed money by Preston and Associates. Victoria had introduced us the week before. "Claire," he said, greeting me at the Marina restaurant. "Thank you for meeting me here." We sat at a table overlooking the water, close enough to Michael's rented cabin that I could see Amanda sunbathing on the dock. "I've reviewed the documents you provided," James said. "The evidence of asset transfer is quite compelling." "What happens next?" I asked. "We file a motion with the court to recover fraudulently transferred assets. The car, the apartment lease, anything they move to avoid creditors. And if they can't pay, then we proceed with criminal charges. Fraudulent transfer is a felony in this state." I watched Amanda adjust her bikini straps, completely oblivious to the legal storm headed her way. "How long?" I asked. "The motion gets filed Monday. They'll be served with papers by Wednesday." "Perfect." Monday morning I was in my kitchen making coffee when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Claire," it was Michael's voice, and he sounded panicked. "We need to talk. Louis, please. This is important." "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Can we meet, please?" I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop downtown. Neutral ground. Public place. Somewhere he couldn't make a scene. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with his hands wrapped around a cup like he was trying to warm himself from the inside out. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, wrinkled shirt, the kind of stress that shows up in your posture. "Thank you for coming," he said as I sat down across from him. "What do you want, Michael?" He ran a hand through his hair. "I'm in trouble, Claire. Serious trouble. You know. I know about Preston and Associates. I know about the loans. I know about the fraudulent transfers." His face went white. "How do you?" "I'm not stupid, Michael. I never was. You just assumed I was." He leaned across the table. "Claire, I need help. From me. You're the only person I can trust." I almost laughed. Trust? From the man who'd been cheating on me for months before asking for a divorce. "What kind of help?" I asked. "I need money. Just enough to satisfy the creditors and make this go away." "How much?" $2 million. $2 million. "I don't have $2 million, Michael. But you have those stocks." I kept my expression neutral. "Stocks. Don't play dumb, Claire. I saw the account statements in your desk when I was packing. Hartwell Industries. Those shares are worth a fortune now." So he'd been snooping through my personal papers, probably looking for assets he could claim in the divorce. "Those stocks are mine," I said. "No." "But Claire, we were married for 8 years. That has to mean something." It did mean something. It meant I'd wasted 8 years of my life with a man who saw me as nothing more than a safety net. "And Amanda," I asked, "what does she think about you asking your ex-wife for money?" His jaw tightened. "Amanda doesn't need to know about this. Doesn't she? I thought you two shared everything now. This is different." Because she doesn't understand business. She doesn't understand how complicated these things can get. But I do. You're the smartest woman I know, Claire. You always have been." Funny how my intelligence had become attractive to him again now that he needed something from me. "I'll think about it," I said, standing up. "Claire, wait. I need an answer soon. The creditors are filing motions this week." "No. I'll be in touch." I left him sitting in that coffee shop, probably calculating how long he had before his world completely collapsed. The answer was 3 days. Wednesday morning, Michael and Amanda were served with court papers demanding the return of fraudulently transferred assets. By afternoon, both their phones had been seized as evidence. Their bank accounts were frozen pending investigation. Thursday, Preston and Associates filed for bankruptcy. Friday, Michael called me from his lawyer's office. "Claire, you have to help me. They're talking about criminal charges." "Are they?" "Please. I'll do anything. Anything." I'll give you the house back. I'll give you everything from the divorce. I already have the house, Michael. And everything in it. Then what do you want? I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything you thought was permanent. I want you to know what it's like when the person you trusted most in the world turns out to be someone completely different. Claire, please. I want you to experience what I experienced when I found out my husband had been stealing from our marriage to fund his affair. Hung up. That evening, Emma came over with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. So she said, settling onto my couch. How does it feel? How does what feel? Winning. I thought about that question. Michael was facing criminal charges and financial ruin. Amanda was probably going to prison for her role in the fraudulent transfers. Preston and Associates was gone. Everything they'd built together was collapsing. Doesn't feel like winning, I said. Feels like justice. Is there a difference? Think so. Winning implies there was a game. This wasn't a game. This was just consequences catching up with choices. Emma raised her wine glass. To consequences then. To consequences. 6 months later, I was sitting in my garden, reading a book and enjoying the afternoon sun, when a car pulled into my driveway. Michael got out and I barely recognized him. He'd lost weight, grown a beard, and his expensive suits had been replaced by jeans and a worn button-down shirt. He looked older, tired, like a man who'd aged years in the span of months. Hello, Claire, he said, approaching slowly. Michael, can we talk? I gestured to the porch chairs. He sat down carefully, like a man afraid of making sudden movements. I wanted to apologize, he said, for everything. And I wanted to thank you. Thank me. You could have pressed charges for the fraudulent transfers. Your lawyer explained that since some of the moved assets came from marital funds, you had standing to file criminal complaints. Could have. But you didn't. The prosecutor told me that without your cooperation, they couldn't make the case. So Amanda didn't go to prison. Neither did I. What happened to her, I asked. She moved back home to Ohio. We're not together anymore. He nodded. That seemed about right. I lost everything else, he continued. The business, the 401k, the car. I'm living in a studio apartment and working for someone else's real estate company now. And how does that feel? Like I deserved it. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the birds and the distant sound of children playing in the neighborhood. Claire, I need you to know something. What's that? I never stopped loving you. Even when I was being stupid and selfish and hurting you, I never stopped loving you. I believe that, I said. But love isn't just a feeling, Michael. It's a choice. Showing up. It's being loyal when things get difficult. I know that now. Do you? I'm trying to. I'm seeing a therapist. Trying to figure out why I sabotaged the best thing in my life. And what have you learned? That I was scared. Scared of getting older, scared of routine. Scared that maybe I wasn't as special as I thought I was. So you found someone who made you feel special. Amanda made me feel like the person I used to be before I had responsibilities and a mortgage and a wife who knew all my flaws. Now I realize that person was never real. He was just a fantasy. The real me is the one who comes home tired from work and complains about the neighbors and worries about retirement savings. The real you is the one who made a commitment and broke it, I said gently. Too. He stood up to leave, then turned back. Are you happy, Claire? You deserve to be happy. After he left, I sat in my garden until the sun went down, thinking about happiness and justice and the strange ways life works out. The truth was, I was happy. Happier than I'd been in years, maybe ever. I'd started my own financial consulting business, working with women who were going through divorces and needed help understanding their assets and options. The work was meaningful in a way my corporate job had never been. I'd also started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but I'd met some interesting men who saw me as more than just a source of stability or security. And every month, I received a rent check for $12,000 from the company that had taken over Preston and Associates' lease. Money that went into an investment account I was building for my future. Michael had thought leaving me would set him free. Instead, he'd freed me from a marriage that had been slowly suffocating us both. Sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. Sometimes losing everything is exactly what you need to find yourself. And sometimes the person who underestimates you ends up teaching you just how strong you really are. But here's what I want to know. If you were in my place, would you have helped him when he asked? Would you have used your power for revenge or mercy? Would you have chosen justice or forgiveness? Because at the end of the day, we all have to live with the choices we make. And I'm still not entirely sure I made the right ones.